Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Michael, there's a buyer for our old house. Why don't you come and show me from work? I can't get off work. You know how it is. Employers are hard to find, and they don't like it when I take time off. Adriana sighed heavily. She was sorry to part with the house and the lot, because it meant she would never go back to her home village again. Besides, the house still contained all the belongings of her husband, who had passed away 5 years ago. But she had left the village to feel better. She should not let Igor catch up with her, although she should not run away from him either. One must keep walking and walk at a moderate pace. One more step and one more. After all, she can't afford to spend all day remembering the happiness she had with Michael. She's a widow. She has a 17-year-old son. He has to go to school and settle down in the city. Adriana doesn't want him to work from dawn to dusk like he and his father. Probably her husband left when he wasn't old yet because the hard work of the household ate him up. No weekends or days off. No, as a woman did not like the village, but she will not let her son repeat the fate of his father. Let him live happily ever after. He'll live to see his grandchildren, maybe even great-grandchildren. Adriana already imagined holding the baby in her arms. Michael, are you a son or a daughter? And her heart beat with the anticipation of a miracle. Life goes on, even though circumstances have changed. But you can't have a Garden of Eden. Her dreams were interrupted by her son's voice. Mom, I don't like the city. Maybe, but it's this town you're drying up here. You're gonna turn into a ghost. What kind of job do you have naming other people's floors? And sitting in a den all day long in the entryway? You can't see the light of God, can you? Mom, I don't like it here either. My peers are boring, not men, but children. They have nothing on their minds, no one to talk to. Everyone's acting out. Mom, let's go back to our cabin. I'm an adult. I'll correct you. Our cabin got a job as a tractor driver like Dad. But Mom, please. I don't want to stay here in town. Michael, though he considered himself a grown man in his 17 years, but now he's developed like a little child. Son, you see, your father's working his ass off, and you look just like him. I can't afford to lose you too. Adriana said to her son and sighed and added to herself, he doesn't believe what he's saying. What's wrong with the city? Hey, look how much for one cleaning a few $100 I get. And if it's a billet, that's the whole 5. It's my good fortune that city women don't like to clean or cook. In the village, no one would pay me so much. And who would even hire a housekeeper? Adriana exhorted her son. In her heart, she agreed with the mystique. In the city, they were strangers. Here, everyone rushed past each other in a hurry, and everyone acted out something. No, she didn't judge the city, but she couldn't belong here. And she knew she never would. Mom, it's not often you get hired to clean. You still work as a concierge 24 hours a day, 3 days a week. You say your father burned out at work in the village. And if I sit like this, or to this point, then what is the point of selling the house and getting an education? Michael was stubborn. All in his father continued to insist on his own. A son doesn't always have to be in work. That's the big point, you know? The duty in the entrance gives us small but stable money. If no one gives us a cleaning order, then we can't live and eat. After all, we have to pay for a room. Don't you understand? And you're not going to work like your mother. You'll get an education, buy a car. It's your stupid, uneducated mother who got married early. I don't know anything else. Just do housework. And guarding the driveway. If only I knew how to trade, I'd go to the market. But I don't know how to charge a price. I do what I'm good at, that's what I do. Will things be better for you? Much better. And it's time to let go of the past. You know, this house reminds me of your father. Go, son, show the house to the buyer. Don't poison my soul. His mother looked at him with a pleading look, as if she was afraid to cry. Michael knew that look well. Now his mother would pretend she had to go to the store. Then she would sit on a bench somewhere and cry. And she's still very young, not even 40. City ladies at that age aren't all theater. I guess we really should sell the house. Or if Mom goes back to the village, she'll start crying every day, like she did the first year after they buried Baishu. Mom, don't worry. I'll do as you ask. Maybe you're right. If there's a buyer, we should sell. Nothing happens in life. That's just what my son said. That's good, son. That's good. Then go to the bus station for the ticket. And I need to go to the store urgently. Women on the move gathered like a fluttering bird that got caught in a net. Adriana had to urgently go out into the sun, and there already secretly cry, so as not to show her son his weakness. After all, Michael only thinks he is a man, but in fact he is still a child, and she must be strong. For his sake, Michael should not see his mother unhappy because he has to build his life and family. And Adriana will have to stomp around until she's old. There's only Joy left, waiting for grandchildren, to make ends meet. When Michael arrived in his native village, it seemed to him that he returned to some lost life, which was the only real one. He noisily and greedily breathed in the air with all the power of his young lungs and listened to the cows kicking out first. It also smelled of leathery hay. It would be good to see Betty, the girl he was in love with. Wasn't she beautiful when she was a boy? She was pretty, but she probably moved on to another fiancé and forgotten their childhood vows of love and fidelity for life. Michael remembered in green eyes, russet hair, and skinny girl. And he himself was surprised that his childhood feelings suddenly returned as if they had never gone anywhere. As if there was some real and true life waiting for him here, and everything in the city was fake and not real. Yeah, it's true. They say where you're born is where you're made, he thought. Michael decided to find out about Betty from her dad, Kathy, but in a casual way, without asking directly. He knew she had a sharp tongue, so he could make fun of her. Kathy was even younger and more blooming. The boy remembered the old country joke that the women of the family had not grown old. They kept vividly talking in a young voice and looking with clear eyes, as if someone had conjured them up. The Kathy who was walking towards them looked like a girl. Her gait was light and mischievous, hands waving like windmills. She could almost jump up and down. But how could she be 60? And only coming closer, you could see the faintly visible wrinkles, which, however, are not at all outdated, but rather emphasized the mischievous expression of the face. It was as if the woman was just a grown-up child. They're the respectable of a country matron. Oh, Michael showed up. Is that right? Are you and your mother selling the house? Have you changed your mind? You're going to marry my granddaughter. Kathy, as usual, took to Weaver at the mention of a granddaughter. Smarty Pants' hearts fluttered. Maybe Betty really was still waiting for him. The last time he'd come to the village was 3 years ago, and he was still a 14-year-old teenager. Betty only said a dry hello. I mean, what do we have to do with you? You're city folk now. You probably don't want to be with us anymore. The boy didn't know what to say. He just looked at her from afar and admired her. What a beauty became the girl, with whom they were still 7 years old in jest or in earnest. Who will remember the dandelion rings? Michael remembered tearing off a stalk and trying to insert the thin end of it into a full tube. He also remembered the white dandelion liquid in the milk that protruded at that moment. He had thought then that Betty would laugh, but she had only solemnly accepted his ring and made one for him. And now here was Grandma, Betty Kathy, asking if he had changed his mind about getting married. No, he hasn't. There's no one else he's ever had his heart set on. Alenka took all his hearts at once, and there was no room for anyone else but his mother. Kathy. No, he didn't change his mind about marrying your granddaughter. Just the groom. I'm not much of a bargain yet. Take one of these. Allegedly in jest, Michael asked, hoping to disguise the serious question that worried him most of all. We will. Why wouldn't we? You're a good-looking guy, strong, hardworking, you'll get up quickly. There's only one problem, he doesn't want to. My granddaughter wants to go to town, she likes it here. What can I do about it? Kathy said loudly and leaned to Noah's ear and added in a half-whisper, Michael, my girl is waiting for you. She just thinks you forgot about her. And I have something to tell you in your ear. Come to my house for tea in an hour. Kathy winked at him. Well, I'll be there then, Kathy. I've got presents for you two, haven't I? Said the skinned one loudly. News, Michael. It turns out that it was not in vain that he worked part-time as a courier, and asked his mother for permission to buy a scarlet gift. Kathy is never wrong. If she said that a girl is waiting for him, then it is so. I wonder how she knows the house is for sale and what she wanted to talk about. The buyer wasn't due until tomorrow, so there was plenty of time. Michael unwrapped the embroidered dandelions and handkerchief. It reminded the Valenki that Michael had not forgotten their childhood engagement, with rings made of dandelion stems decorated with little yellow flowers instead of jewels. Betty saw your no. He brought you a present of some kind. You be nice to him. The guy's shy. Kathy decided to set the stage for a reunion. His gifts, he's probably already got a city girl in mind. He's keeping me as a backup. If he liked me, I'd visit him more often and he'd move to the country. Betty became an owl with resentment. She realized she'd said the wrong thing to the guy 3 years ago, and his father had just died. She could have at least just talked to him calmly, but she decided to play the arrogant one. What's gotten into her? Grandma says she's bringing a present. I'd have to talk to him like a human being this time. Betty understood that this white-haired, gray-haired, kindly man of Bogeter appearance had fallen into her heart, and she couldn't imagine any other guy near her, even though there were those who were interested in her. What's there to be surprised about? The women in their family had always had plenty of suitors. There was some kind of magic in their lineage. All the maidens and women were more beautiful than any other, and they kept their youth and vigor until they were very old. But they knew in the village that the women of their family were always one loving. If a maiden chooses someone, she lives all her life. So it was with Kathy's grandmother. Her husband got drunk and strayed and left for the city long ago, divorced her, and she never thought about her private life again. Then grandfather tried to come back and ask for forgiveness. But women were famous not only for their loyalty, but also for their unbending character. Grandmother did not forgive grandfather for betraying her. She said he'd strayed from the path. So at least be a good husband to your second wife. Who needs it? A rolling field? And when Betty learned that Michael and her mother were going to the city, she remembered the story with her grandfather and thought that her heartfelt friend in the city would forget about her. It was as if the city had a dangerous property of etching the memory of those you loved. But now she had grown up and understood that the city could not influence a person if he wanted to love and keep his heart. But if a person is frantic, then at least in the city, at least in the village, he will be able to exchange a real gold coin. He can exchange his love for a lot of things, for trifles, entertainments, and affairs. Michael, come in, come in. Betty and I are setting the table. The girl heard her grandmother's voice and heard the footsteps of the one she felt was meant for her. Right from the moment he put a dandelion ring on her finger. Alenka, look what beauty Michael brought you as a present. I told you so. He remembers, he hasn't forgotten you. And you didn't believe me. Her daddy gave her away with her guts, and so the girl's cheeks flushed when she went out and saw in her grandmother's hands a real miracle green handkerchief over those yellow dandelions, which, like tiny suns, suddenly lighted up her life and made possible her happiness, which she already thought had been stolen from her by the city. I remember you. How could you think you'd forgotten? Mother really wants to sell the house, but I've already decided everything. I'll leave her the money for the house and come to the village to work. I've already talked to them. They'll take me in and give me a dormitory to live in for the first time. You like my present? The young man grasped like a straw at Kathy's phrase that Betty thought he had forgotten her, and he waited with fear. Now she was going to say she didn't need him, and that she didn't care if he remembered her or not. Maybe she would even dismiss with disdain the handkerchief he had saved up for and chosen for so long. When the young man asked if he liked the gift, he meant the very different question of whether he himself needed it even a little. That's why it seemed to him that from the answer it is a twist, eyes, and okay beauty. Now could crack the globe in half or, on the contrary, light up the sun in his chest. Of course, love Michael's gift. These dandelions are a miracle. So if you haven't forgotten our childhood engagement, I'm sorry I said some crazy things to you 3 years ago. I was mad at you for not coming home more often. But anyway, we've grown up and we're different people now. But if you come here, we can get reacquainted. The girl was embarrassed and realized that this time again she had said too much. Just too much of a good thing. It was always like this. No, in the family they will say too much in words, then too little. Well, come on to the table. Grandma has something amazing to tell us. Kathy just saved them from a long pause in which no one dared to say anything else. Each of the young people had already taken a step into the abyss of falling in love. Where was there room to fail or to fly? And now Betty and Michael were madly glad that they had not failed. And now they could just drink tea and listen to Grandma talk. So I'll tell you what, guys. A week ago, Adriana calls me and asks me to show the house to a buyer. So I go in at the appointed time, and there it is. Michael's standing there. But he's your dead father, only he's wearing city clothes and he looks different. Well, I guess it's a miracle. Kathy went on to tell me in great detail that the buyer of the house looked just like my father. He was about the same age. Michael and Betty laughed at Grandma. It was common knowledge that Kathy could sometimes embellish things. Maybe this stranger does look a little like his father. Well, does he look just like him? And he's here to buy this house. That's right, Grandma's dead. So they had tea in a joking row. See what you say when Michael sees this buyer? You'll know how to laugh at Kathy then, won't you? Grandma wagged her finger at the young men, but they only laughed louder. After all, when they were even smaller, Kathy liked to tell them different scary stories about the waterman, because of which you cannot cry far away. And about Baba Yaga, because of whom it is impossible to pick mushrooms without adults. So is the house suitable for you? Michael asked the next day, from a tall blonde guy who looked just like his late father. And boy, did you see yourself in 20 years. So as not to scare the stranger, he tried to stay calm, but this time his grandmother wasn't lying. He did look just like his father. It fits. I was supposed to live here, you know, kid, but fate took a turn. Now I'm trying to figure out what my life could have been like. Anyway, I was born here once. It's hard to explain. I wanted to forget the past, but now there's nothing left of my old life. So I've decided to go back to my roots. I'll try to start a new life here. That was Noah's answer to him when he tried. And you asked the man why he decided to buy this particular house. Michael was hesitant to mention the resemblance to his father. Can't the man see how much they look alike? Only one is older and the other younger. What's he doing here? The village is pretty abandoned. The roads are bad. The bus only comes once a week. It's not exactly a great place for a new life. Although if he was born here like he says, it could be anything. We should ask his mother. Maybe she'll have an explanation for this mystery. Michael decided to take a picture of the passport to discuss with his mother. What could be the mystery? Well, if the house fits, let me take a picture of the passport for my mother. She's the final decision. If the mother doesn't change her mind, we can start processing in a couple of weeks. Do we have a deal? Michael asked. When the prospective buyer's car pulled away, Michael took a closer look at the passport photo. The Noah was there. Michael's late father. How could they be related? Son, you've really blossomed. Betty liked your gift, but she knew what was important to her son. So she started with the right question. Mom, yes, I did. Thanks for helping me pick it out. And then you decided on the dandelions yourself. Michael was embarrassed. Mom, you better tell me this. Did father have a brother or other relative in the village? You know, because the buyer, with whom I spoke, scared me, you look like father. Look, I took a picture of his passport. The son handed his mother a cell phone, on the screen of which she saw her late husband. But the name, patronymic, and surname were different. Son, how can that be? The name is different. Your father really had a brother. Your paternal grandmother, Grandma Christina, put him in an orphanage when he was a baby. I asked her why she did it that way. She kept one and gave the other away. They were only 2 years apart. My mother-in-law told me that she was sick and was afraid she couldn't take two. Then she stepped in and didn't speak to me for a week. But I realized it was a sensitive subject, and your grandmother never asked about anything else, said Adriana to her son. Mom, yes, Grandma Christina, she's not our favorite. I went to see her for a while and gave her some hotels from you. She just asked me dryly, when you're there, come and see her. She had something important to do with you. I don't know why she told you she couldn't make it and was sick. There's something wrong here, Mom. She's a strong, ruddy woman even now. I don't remember her ever being sick. Michael didn't know what to say to his mother about not knowing, because he had told Christina's grandmother about him. She didn't react at all. He tried to ask Kathy Grandma Betty about it, but she didn't say anything at all. She just said it was none of her business. Even though the whole village knows how she likes to gossip, it's a dark case. The son told his mom everything he'd learned, or rather, that nothing had been learned. Michael, well, what can we do? Anyway, this Noah is giving a decent price for the house. So your father's brother or no brother, we have to sell. I'll go in a week and find out for myself. You, Betty, and you've made up your mind. Will she go to town? My mother asked me out of the blue. Mom, no, she doesn't want to go to town. We don't know what's going to happen. So there is time to think about it. The son blushed. Oh, I know you young people. Your time is racing, rushing. What are you thinking of? Should we go back to the village? You tell your mother straight. I know you well. Tell me what your plan is. His mother had him up against the wall with her question. He didn't plan to tell her about his plan to get a job when he came of age. He didn't want to say that he was going to give the money from the sale of the house to his mother so that she could get a job and he could take care of her. Mom, let's talk later. Michael wasn't ready to talk yet. Later, I know later. Tell me one thing, should I sell the house? Or have you and Betty already decided? Adriana asked. Sell it as you wish. Moreover, the buyer has found only Michael answered. Adriana sighed tiredly. And what did her son have in mind? Probably he's going to move to the country. I'll have to talk to Kathy. She's the one with her ears to the ground, and she'd never miss a fly. So now I've got 3 reasons to go to the village, find out from Kathy what the young people are up to find out if this Noah is her late husband's brother, and to visit her mother-in-law and find out what business she has. After all, her husband's mother won't just call her. She's a stern and uncommunicative woman. Through the village, Adriana went by train to the nearest district center. Then she had to walk for half an hour through the meadow. And that was the only way to get to the bus that went to their village. The schedule was strict. The bus came only once a week. That's why the woman arrived early. She was afraid of being late. So it was possible to walk leisurely on the green soft grass, where yellow dandelions had already bloomed like sunshine. Everything was so native to the earth, as if it gave her strength. They arrived with every step. It seems not in vain in ancient fairy tales Bogaters gained strength from the Earth Mother. Here she is, a simple woman, finally decided to change something in her fate and the fate of her son. And for her it was a feat. To be honest, it was scary to lose the only house and only rent a room. The son is still young, though he was thinking of getting married by the looks of it. And after all, life is a mystic, does not know it all, especially in the city. But that's okay. You'll study at the institute and become a scientist and earn good money. And she'll talk to Betty. Explain the situation. Offer the girl to move to the city, or what other option will they find together? A bus stop appeared in the distance. Adriana could already see it around the corner. Everything remained the same, iron painted with graffiti from the mason half broken. Suddenly, the woman saw the bus for which she had come all this way and left work for 2 whole weeks. And now that bus was leaving. The woman ran as fast as she could, but with 2 bags, with hotels and a backpack behind her. It wasn't easy. I won't make it. There's no way I'll make it. That was all she could think. The bus had already disappeared around the corner. Adriana sadly walked to the bus stop and thought about the fact that now the week was wasted, as well as the money spent on the fare. She studied the schedule, and then she realized why it had happened like this. After all, today was June 1, and the bus had changed to the summer schedule and was arriving half an hour earlier, and she was looking at the spring schedule. What a jerk. Well, now there is nothing left but to weave a heavy bag with a backpack to the electric train. After all, she can't afford to splurge on a cab. Yes, it'll cost a lot of money to get to their village. 101 at least. Adriana sat down on a bench that the local hooligans had made twice as thin and felt like a bird that now has nowhere to fly. Though she was so eager. It's at least 2 o'clock to the train. She'd make the return trip in half an hour tops, so we can take a little break, especially since there are no people at the stop. And it's raining like a bucket. I barely had time to run. And it's pouring down with a thunderstorm. The bus stop was so familiar. I remember going shopping with my husband in the village center. They never had a car. They lived poorly but happily. There was always the strong shoulder of Michael, silent and tall. Now she would complain to him, because look what a stretch, I made a mistake with the schedule. And her husband would never scold her like many other village men. They say, a chicken is not a bird, and grandmother is not a person. He put his arm around her shoulders affectionately and calmly, and she would feel that the world had become reliable again. Then he'd be quiet for 10 minutes and say, "Oh, Adriana, is it my fault? Honey, you've been spinning your wheels. A day. With a life like this, is it surprising to forget such a small thing? Nothing. Now I'll call Jacob or whoever he's going to drop us off with, and then I'll pay him back in my own way." He promised to help him fix the barn anyway. It was leaking. Then he would talk in a calm voice to one person, then to a second or third. It wouldn't have taken half an hour before someone would have come for them. And her hands wouldn't be sore from the handles of the bags, which had rubbed her fingers, even though they had seemed so light when she'd left home. Oh, and the backpack was comfortable and didn't rub her shoulders. But now, as Adriana was packing for the return trip, it all seemed insurmountable. Yes, if her husband were alive, he would not have noticed all this weight, would have carried the bags and backpack as a tire with one left, as he said. "What's there to carry? It's you. You don't have to lift anything. I'll pick it up myself." After all, a husband is a protector. And now there's no protector around her. She felt it immediately after Michael was gone, as if the invisible protective shell around her had disappeared. She had been pushed around on buses and subways, cheated in stores and at the market. And even the locksmith who came to fix the faucet allowed himself to make some silly hints. What does he think? Since the woman lives alone, she's ready to throw herself at the first man she meets. But no, I guess her baby moon is over. The picture of meeting her husband came to mind. It was raining, just like now. And she was running in a kidney dress, covering herself with a bag under the visor of the village store. She had come here recently to work as a milkmaid and knew almost no one here. Their village was quite remote, and it was impossible to work there. And after Mom was gone, she had to help her younger sisters. She rushed away. She felt the water pouring into her sandals and immediately pouring out of them. And the desired visor was very close. But her way was blocked by a huge pothole in the road, filled with muddy water. You can't go around it, and you can't jump over it. There was a fence on one side and a ditch on the other. Oh, I should have worn rubber boots. Adriana regretted it. Suddenly, she heard near her ear, "Girl, carry you across the puddle." And she saw a tall, clean-cut blonde man who was smiling embarrassedly. He didn't seem to be insolent, thought the girl, and answered, "I'm the one who looks small, and in fact very heavy. You slipped, and we will collapse together into this puddle still gigantic." Adriana answered the stranger with a ringing laugh. "No, we won't. My name is Michael, by the way. I've lived here since I was a kid. Everybody knows me. I'm a decent man, and I'm single, by the way. The word unmarried." Michael emphasized then especially. "Where are you from? What's your name?" While Adriana was about to answer, the stranger suddenly picked her up like a stew and spread her legs wide and gingerly fumbled for the bottom of the treacherous puddle. Before stepping thoroughly, already as if it were a stew, he carried her to safety. And she, without noticing it, was under the canopy, and the downpour couldn't wet her anymore. "I, Adriana, have been your milkmaid for a month now. I've come from a neighboring village, compared to which yours is a sight to behold. I thought it was the suburbs. I've only been to the city once, when my mom was still alive." "Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. I'm done talking about you. Thank you, Michael. Let's get acquainted," said Adriana, who was barely 18, and after a moment's thought, added, "And I'm a decent person too, and I'm not married." At this, Adriana so seriously stepped her eyebrows that the future husband then laughed. "Well, if not married, it is a remediable matter. And maybe I am your destiny to carry you through life, as carried through this puddle. What do you think? Michael asked, smiling. To Irina, he seemed flippant at the time. After all, she did not know that he was a modest and reserved man. He just felt it, as he told her later that he had met his wife. Aren't you in too much of a hurry? Family is a serious matter, she said. Then the word serious came. You can't think she's a frivolous shepherdess. Adriana, come on, I didn't mean any offense. I was just hinting that I like you. But if you're ready to consider a guy with serious intentions, let's go to the movies this weekend. What kind of movies do you like? Asked the guy, embarrassed. And the girl realized that he was not some kind of billick and womanizer, but quite a nice guy. There was something of his own and native about him. Why not go? I'm staying with a friend of mine, by the way. She gave me the street and the house number. I know. Good people. All right, then wait for me Saturday at lunchtime, the guy said, and vanished into the rain, as if he had become invisible. And now, when Adriana remembered the long story of the first time she met her husband, it seemed to her that her husband was somewhere near. In this rain that is pounding on the roof of the bus stop. After all, her husband was probably watching over her even now. She calmed down and even stopped crying. What a misfortune, she thought. The rain is almost over. Now I'll go back to the train and come again in a week. That's the end of it. Kathy's mother-in-law will look out the window and tell her how the medics screwed up. I'll write it down and take it. There's a reason he taught me how to communicate with this modern thing. How did it not fight back? I bought a used modern cell phone. That one really turned out to be a handy thing. If only because you could take pictures and write free messages. Adriana was about to take out her phone and write to her son that he missed the bus and would be home by evening, as it was right beside her. A gray car was signaling. Excuse me, you, Adriana. A man's voice asked her, and the woman thought she was going to faint. After all, sticking herself out of the car. The man was an exact replica of her late husband's Michael. Yes, Adriana. Where are you from? She couldn't formulate a sentence. She was struck over the head by lightning. She wanted to ask Benjamin, because you were gone. Where are you from? Or am I already dead? But there were glimmers in her mind that it might be Noah, the mysterious buyer. After all, they'd arranged to meet today. And Noah, your son showed me the house last week. I saw a picture of you. I apologize for the suddenness of this. The bus has already left. Let's go with the visa. I'm on my way to meet you. Let's do it. Give me your bags. I got a big trunk. The man's hustling. Adriana came to her senses. It was good that her son and Kathy had warned her in advance that the buyer looked so much like her late husband. Otherwise, she would have had a stroke. The voice is identical. The movement, the posture. Except the eyes are very sad, like an abandoned dog. Michael's eyes were always on fire, but this man's eyes are dreary. Alien. Come on, of course. I was so upset I missed the bus. I'm sorry I got so confused and pulled you out on you. You look exactly like my late husband, Michael. Rustic. Did they tell you that already? Adriana asked me directly. It was as if she wanted to shake off the obsession and be sure that it was not her husband. They told me about it. It's a long road. It's good that we met on the way and we'll talk about everything, Noah said. Actually, Noah had planned to talk to his brother's wife directly and to find out from her something about his stepmother, Aunt Christina. But when he saw her at the bus stop a miniature, painted bald her half-woman, half-child, defenseless and confused with a stupid pigtail, which was fixed by some bright nook, color focus, he decided to wait with serious talk. It seems that this Adriana has enough problems, and he with his troubles will obviously not belong here. Probably hasn't gotten over the loss of her husband yet, and she's got a son to take care of on her own. She rents a place in the city. In this case, of course, it's not about other people's problems, but about her own. Because the woman did not ask him whether he was really born in this village and whether he was not a relative of her late husband. Noah only kept silent and joked, saying that he himself was an orphanage boy. And here are the villagers. They told him he looked just like the late owner of the house. That's why he said he was born here. But he doesn't really remember anything at all. Was he born here or not? Why do we want to stay in the village? It's a wonderful place. Yes, Noah has a cold, but it won't take long to get better. But the apple orchard is wonderful. It's so nice. And the land, it's just gold, his wife's black, fertile black soil. And how did you notice the land and the garden? It's my pleasure as a hostess. I wouldn't want to sell the place to some city slicker who's gonna picnic here once in a while. No, don't think I have nothing against the city, but it's just that my husband used to order a couple of cars of manure here every year, and then spread it all over the plot. Do you know what a miracle the apple orchard is? Because Benjamin made it so that we had apples before all appeared, and later than all ended there and early ripe, and ordinary, and very late. It's good that the neighbors look after the plot. Have you seen our raspberries? Huge, and sweet, and they fall into my hands. Adriana sighed, do you miss living here? Would you like to come back? Noah asked bluntly. And then he hesitated. Well, I mean, won't you regret selling the house? No, I won't. I mean, my son has to go to school. What about me? I'm nothing. My husband did all the hard work for me. I was behind him like a stone wall. So he burned out before his time, always smiling and pretending he never got tired. That's how it turned out. The woman was silent. All the rest of the way they talked about trifles and trivialities. Noah realized that the memories of her husband were a very painful subject. He tried not to touch it. Finally, the native hills appeared on the horizon. Where are you staying? Asked the woman. Yes, I've rented a room from your neighbor Mason, just while you guys figure out the house. So don't worry. Let me help you with your bags. It's not right for a woman to be carrying such heavy things. Are you guys carrying bricks or something? Noah asked. No, what bricks? It's stew. A customer bartered with me, and I decided to bring my neighbors some presents, and some other little things they asked for. Some embroidery threads and small gifts. You don't have to work hard. I can't lift such heavy things. I'm a Russian woman. You know, like with a paddle. Adriana laughed awkwardly. Oh no, let me carry your bags myself. You'll have time to carry them. Unless you're thinking of getting married again, said the man and helped himself. Why did he say marriage? He didn't know. It just came out of his mouth. It's just that she's all blooming and pretty and womanly. So he wanted to say something that would make her shoulders square and stop her looking so unhappy. Oh, but would you say marriage too? Adriana blushed, but suddenly her shoulders really straightened with a blush on her cheeks. She looked even more beautiful with wet hair curled with handkerchiefs. Knocked out of the stupid braid, and she looked even more like a girl. Even her voice, then young and ringing. One could never say, this is a widow and the mother of a huge guy, a bogator. That's how they said goodbye. On the way, Adriana said that she had to talk to a few more people and consult. So she would make a decision about the house in a couple of days. Alrighty then. I'm still at Mason's bank, Noah said, and added if you need any help, you're welcome. And about the solution. If you even come up with one, I can live with it. So you take heart. Listen, he said one last time. And suddenly, warmly, he smiled. The way Michael always smiled. And from this Noah with his eyes of abandoned dogs. She hadn't expected such a warm and patronizing smile. It was as if a block of ice had melted in her soul. And she felt like a young girl who for the first time in a long time someone was protecting and caring for her. Maybe it really wasn't over yet, and someday she might get married. What did this Noah say? The woman tried to convince herself that it was all the dope of loneliness and longing. But the joy in her heart wouldn't go away, and there was something new there too. Hope. The day passed without a hitch. Adriana looked in on Kathy and learned that Michael and Betty were secretly going to stay in the village and leave the money for the house to her. Oh, don't worry. What's a hostel? They'll stay with me. There's not enough room. As for the house, it's up to you. Your son is right. You shouldn't be alone with my catsup. At least buy a room in the city, as he advises, or go back to the village and don't sell your house. We'll make a wedding with the whole world, and there'll be work for you. Stop scrubbing other people's floors. The woman's age isn't that long, and you're still a young and attractive woman. Kathy insisted. There she goes. Everyone today, as if in conspiracy, reminds her that she can still have a private life. It's like the suitors are lining up. Betty knows from her friends what can await a woman of her age who is not rich, to put it mildly. Some eel who drinks, walks, and looks for a safe harbor, where they always give money for a bubble, or she will get a widower with kids. And when she grows up, he'll say goodbye to her. What's left? A relationship that's supposedly for health. What do you call it now? No. She respects herself, and she's not going to desperately throw herself at the first guy for the illusion of a relationship. That's what Adriana was thinking on her way to her mother-in-law's house, whom she had promised to drop by tonight. Adriana, hello. Long time no see. How much do you get for the house? The mother-in-law asked me right from the door. Adriana wasn't the least bit surprised by Michael's mother. She was always a bit unloved, kept to herself. Nobody could say anything bad about her in the village. But no one said anything good about her either. And yet she faithfully sent them some money for all the holidays and called them once a quarter. So their relationship was alienated, but they could not be called bad. Yeah, Aunt Christina's money's pretty good. To be honest, I didn't expect that kind of money. Adriana named the amount that would be enough to buy a small dorm room for her and her son. And there'd be enough left over for a couple years of school. Well, I don't need money from old women. It's the house that keeps the family together. What do you say I give you twice as much right this week? Christina asked. Adriana was so taken aback. Her mother-in-law had always been a stingy woman. But if she promised something, she kept her word. So if she's offering, she really wants to buy. But why would she want a second house? Aunt Christina, I don't feel comfortable charging you that kind of money. You're my kin. And yet, even though our relationship hasn't always been easy, but you know, I've always loved your son and I respect you. Tell me, what's the reason? Why do you need another house? Adriana asked. This ring is none of your business. I won't say any more than I've said. My mother-in-law cut me off. Then they drank tea in silence and parted in a strange state of mind. They did not seem to be quarreling, but there were storm clouds over both of them. The next day, Adriana went to the Mason house, where Noah had a room. There was no need to call him. The man was fiddling with the jar, just as he had told her, and holding the old boards of the anteroom. And with the help of an ancient nailer, and the front porch boards were already lying new as toy boards. Fresh boards one to look at. Apparently, they had already been covered with several coats. And now the new anteroom was not threatened by rain or snow. Tosca darkened with time, like the ones the man was now cleaning. Adriana involuntarily admired his precise Slavic movements. There is something magical about watching the work of a man whose hands grow from the right place. All movements, as if pre-planned, clear and unmistakable, without apparent effort. And already the veranda is gradually becoming as good as new. Adriana, why don't you say something? I could be here for a long time. Have you decided about the house? Noah asked, and then he got excited. Come on, I've made you some tea. Mason was here about 10 minutes ago with his old samovar. It's probably ready by now. Ready. Oh, on young people, he grumbled from somewhere on the veranda. The old man and the nose and washed the bowl dry. Gallantly withdrew and for some reason winked at Adriana, say, I will not interfere with their Spartacus talk. Your business is young. Adriana had no time to object that she was not so young. And Mason was already gone, much to Adriana's delight. Her grandfather even brought some pieces of sugar head from somewhere from the Soviet times. This is the thing. Noah smiled. I don't know where Mason got it from. It's a sugar head. But at first I almost broke my teeth when I wanted to buy tea in my bite. I'd forgotten there was such a thing. Yeah, rarities, Adriana laughed. So did you decide something? Impatiently, Noah asked. It came out kind of abruptly, but the man was uncomfortable with the silly hints and Mason's wink. Adriana would think that he had said something about her to the old man and would be offended. But I'll be blunt, Noah, I got another customer yesterday. It's my mother-in-law, Aunt Christina. You know my late husband's mother. She absolutely wants it. She wants this house so badly, She's willing to pay twice as much. Don't think I'm price gouging. I'm not gonna ask you for more. I just want to make sure I don't offend anyone. Adriana saw the change in Noah's face when she mentioned her mother-in-law and thought that he must have thought she was pulling some cheap trick to increase the cost. Christina exhaled Noah and smashed the already empty cup on the table. But after a minute, he pulled himself together and began frantically sweeping up the shards and speaking toward the bathhouse. Don't worry, Mason, I accidentally knocked over your cup, but I'll buy you a new one tomorrow just like it. Don't worry, Noah, you just don't scare your lady, Mason said. Noah realized and began to apologize to Adriana, but he didn't think that she was making a big deal out of it. He had his own reasons, and when the woman tried to ask, the man just ran out of the house, got in his car, and screamed, I'll buy a cup. Mason, if you'll excuse me, took off down a country road, forgot to put anything on his feet, just ran off barefoot. Did something happen? Mason asked thoughtfully. I don't know, didn't explain anything. He went crazy and left, answered Adriana. Well, it happens to everyone. You should take a look at him. He's a good man, Mason said. Adriana wanted to explain that calls are in quotes. He's gonna be 40 in a few years. But then she realized that the man had already had a lot on his chest at lunchtime. After all, the tenant who rented the room had evidently allowed the increased expense of fuel to fuel Mason's body with the healing liquid, which the old man said was reliable for the alcoholic body and hedged against every disease in the world. If Mason's wife were alive now, she would certainly add, but if the whole village will die, and you will live forever, and in fire, and in water you will not drown. I guess I won't live to see my husband sober at lunchtime. But Mason's wife was long gone, and Adriana preferred not to receive her grandfather. For though he drank, he was a kind and gentle man. The whole village loved him. And yet why was this Noah rushing around like a bomber? And like a saber rattling on the table. When she mentioned Christina, something's not right. We should look into it. But how can we do that if nobody wants to say anything? And whoever wants to talk doesn't know anything. Adriana felt that not everything was clear, so she decided to postpone selling the house for the time being. Better to stay in the village for a week than to make a mistake. After all, she's her mother-in-law's house. Maybe she's just playing along. There's an old woman who's got a grudge against Noah for something. Sell Noah's house. Maybe she'll hurt her mother-in-law for nothing. And does the house even need to be sold if her son and his fiancée are so serious? Isn't it an investment on her part to deprive her son of his home? So you can live in the bride's house, son, and he's gonna get his ass handed to him. And mother will pretend to be noble and buy herself a room in town. And live happily ever after. In general, it was clear from all sides that the situation had to be thoroughly investigated. Adriana did not believe in intuition. After all, too often a person takes for a hint of the heart what he has already decided to do, and the voice of conscience is too quiet. And if a man is very horny, you can't hear your conscience. Take her, for instance. If she had listened to intuition now in quotes, she would not have sold the house at all. After all, the easiest thing to do was to do nothing and decide nothing. But something told her that she had to do something about the house. But what was still unclear? Adriana dialed Noah's message. Let's talk about this directly, just so I know if I can sell the house to you. You're a good man, but I can't just take offense at my mother-in-law just because you're mad at her for something and broke a cup. Of course, the message was not the smartest and subtle. To put it bluntly, quite stupid and too direct. But Adriana just wrote what she thought. She's not good at innuendo. Several times in her life, she has tried to avoid direct important conversations, and it always ended up in insults, dragging out issues. So if you don't offend or blame anyone, you can and should speak directly in a difficult situation. Of this, the woman was now sure. The next day, she gathered in the nearest village and began to study the schedule of the bus, with which she had been so unlucky on this visit to the village. Now, Adriana's shooting sparrow, and will not fall into this trap with the schedule again. We'll study it before every trip. Teterin, where are you going? Betty appeared next to me out of nowhere. On her shoulders, she wore the same dandelion shawl. To tell the truth, in the store the yellow flowers were not so huge, and Adriana, with her son's permission, had threaded them out, and so skillfully as if they were alive. And now these dandelions bloomed on the shoulders of her son's bride and the future mother of her grandson. So it was not in vain that she invested all her love and longing for her native village when she processed the drawing on the handkerchief. Now it looked even more marvelous from the fact that it was combined with the wonderful eyes of the girl, which flowed out sparks that are familiar only to a man who loved long, patiently, and was still ready for the fact that the other half of it may forget. Adriana couldn't help but admire the girl. She was definitely lucky in life. Could her son have been luckier with his future wife and the mother of his children? And how many people are looking for their happiness all their lives? But Michael hooked up with such a beauty as a child in a joke with dandelion rings. Well, she's standing there like an old woman thinking, she's got to answer something. Betty. Yes, I want to go to the village store to buy something, the woman replied. If you want, I'll take you out and bring everything you need, the girl offered. No, I just need to buy a little something. To be honest, especially nothing, and do not need to buy. I just want to remember when my husband and I went grocery shopping together. We were young then. Just like now, you and Noah rode bicycles and saved money for the bus, Adriana admitted. Aunt Adriana, it's faster on a bicycle now. Let me give you mine. My father sent it to me from the city. It's a very nice bike. It must be worth a lot of money, the girl said. Adriana sighed. She knew that her father had left her mother when she got sick. And when she'd thought of coming back, she had already taken the consumption. Yeah, good woman in the family, but unlucky in love. Maybe the scarlet one will be luckier. After all, if her grandmother and mother bore her difficult fate with dignity, she must be lucky. So she bears her share, as she can in the hope that the medics in life her patience and labor will be credited for. If a mother doesn't grumble, her son must be lucky. That's what the woman thought and said aloud. Betty, let's have your bike. But if I come back in 5 minutes, don't laugh. Then retirement is just around the corner. Adriana laughed. Come on, Aunt Adriana, you're still young and beautiful. Well, if you come back, I can ride the bus with you respectfully, said the girl. Betty knew very well that her fiance's mother knew that they were serious and had already accepted her as a future wife. Therefore, the relationship between the woman and the girl was smooth and respectful, familial. So it turned out that Adriana, in her almost 40 years as some city dweller, rolled that from the spirit to the village store only the wind in her ears and whistled. It's a good thing she only brought a backpack. There would have been nowhere to put the bags. That's how Noah saw her, with her developing short hair and a gambling look. The man was stunned. But how could such a woman have a grown-up son? He couldn't get it into his head. He wanted, to tell the truth, to finish this story with the house and forget about his plan forever, to start a new life in the village where he was born. But he liked Adriana. Even though they had only known each other for a short time, her image had settled firmly in his heart. There are some women who don't set off alarms in the heart of even the most cautious and beaten men. Noah had finally found such a woman. He didn't want to think about why he liked her or whether they'd ever work out. He was just glad that the first shy green grass was growing on the ashes of his soul again. After the car accident, which killed his wife and unborn baby, he decided to permanently quit his personal life, to spin frivolous novels and just waste time women. Without giving anything in return, he was not able to. And to build a serious relationship with someone was not forces. That's how it turned out that he, like Adriana, became a widower 5 years ago. That's why he decided to try to dig into the life he could have had. But it didn't work out. Adriana, good afternoon. I want to apologize to you. The man approached the one with whom in his heart he had already begun to build a relationship, although he did not know whether this feeling had any chance of reciprocity. Even apologizing and making excuses to her was easy and pleasant. Hello, I thought you'd never text me back, and now I'm seeing you. But I'm glad you did. And I have nothing to forgive you for, the woman replied. There's a little cafe nearby. You can leave your bike there and have a coffee. I'll tell you everything, but you must promise to keep it a secret. Deal? asked Noah, although he was sure that everything he said would be kept strictly between them. But why not have coffee? It would make me feel like a lady of the world for once. To be honest, I usually drink tea with all the herbs I pick up in the country in the summer. But you can have coffee for a change. I brew it well myself. In the city, a lot of people drink it. I work as a housekeeper. I told you. What's that got to do with it? I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. What do you care what I do? Adriana blushed. In fact, she noticed the sympathy in his gaze and immediately wanted to dot the I's. She was a simple woman, and she didn't have any stars in the sky. But it was a silly thing to do. Why did she have to blurt it out right away? It's okay. I'm interested to know more about you. I like you a lot. Adriana, but first, let me tell you everything I promised. They sat on the veranda and chatted like an old acquaintance. Noah didn't think he'd ever take to anyone, and just lay it all out like that. But the words poured out of him like a waterfall, and he couldn't stop them. Adriana's attentive brown eyes seemed to pass those pain-filled words through some kind of love filter, and the pain was gone. Only the facts remained. Within an hour, Adriana knew his whole story. Christina, her mother-in-law, was not the birth mother to her late husband Michael and his sibling Noah. The father of Michael and Noah had married Christina by second marriage, and she had a daughter in her arms, Christina Clara's daughter. Adriana knew. She had married some store owner and rarely visited her mother. Christina was upset that she hardly ever saw her grandchildren. Michael and Noah's father had fallen ill and died under mysterious circumstances. He had just been healthy, and a month later he suddenly burned to death. Adriana noted to herself that almost the same thing had happened to her husband Michael. Only he was ill for 6 months with the same mysterious illness. Then, when the father of Michael and Noah was Gone's stepmother, forged documents for marriage to James, their father. They were never officially married. Only for the villagers played a wedding so that they did not pester with silly questions. After the death of her civilian husband, Christina gave Noah to an orphanage. There he was adopted by foster parents. And although they tried to hide from Noah that he was not his own, and he had a brother, he perfectly remembered the village of Christina's brother, and even his father James. Adriana thought about this story and said to Noah, "But I never heard of the army or the apiary." Of course, I don't remember Father Michael not being there when my late husband was very young, but he always told me that they lived from penny to penny. How did that happen? And why would my mother-in-law, Christina, forge a marriage certificate? She's a serious, thorough woman. I doubt she'd live with a man who didn't want to legitimize her relationship. Adriana, she wrinkles her forehead. Something wasn't adding up. Adriana, I can answer one thing for sure. My stepmother couldn't legitimize her relationship with my father because her husband was in jail for a very serious offense. She ran away from him with the baby while he was still free. My stepmother, a woman of courage and determination. Only 10 years ago, her husband was gone, and she breathed a sigh of relief and stopped being afraid for herself and her daughter. She told me that herself, the very first time I visited and Michael was showing the house. She showed me the papers, and I made sure that she had indeed changed her name and surname. But what became of my father's inheritance? The cheese in the army and the apiary she didn't want to say. And why did she put me in an orphanage? She didn't tell me either, Noah answered. Well, you can't tell a stranger's soul. And my mother-in-law must have had a hard time. I mean, she's been hiding most of her life. But I don't believe that Christina took her inheritance and put you in an orphanage just for money. Although, of course, everything happens in life. It's not for us to judge. Sometimes fate throws out such a fortune that a person does not know how to act the next day. Adriana said thoughtfully, I'm not blaming my stepmother. I just want to find out what happened. You see, my wife and child died. My parents adopted me at an old age. They're long gone, and there's nothing left of my life. And I'm so glad I have a nephew in you, Adriana. You won't believe this, but I'm happy to see Christina too. Because I don't want to take anything away from her. Even if it turns out she got rid of me for selfish reasons, it's just better to start life with the truth. So I've decided to buy this house. I realize it takes time. Now you understand, Noah asked me. Yes, I do. The woman was looking at the old documents she'd been given. Saw little Michael and Noah, their late father, studying the documents. But not because she didn't believe Noah. She was just trying to get a feel for what the right thing to do would be. And the man was glad he had brought the originals with him. He didn't want the woman he liked so much to mistake him for a passable crook, or worse, a resentful infantile man who had come to take revenge on his old stepmother. This woman did not judge him, but her opinion was very important to him, more important than the house and all the new life he was about to start. If she sells me the house and the lot, I'll build a new house and garden, and maybe we'll live there together someday. I'm sorry I fell in love with your wife, brother, but she needs protection and support. That's just the way it is. And it seemed to Noah that his brother had mentally blessed him and allowed him to build a life with the woman he had loved all his earthly life. But now his brother was beyond earthly life. If you love someone, you wish them happiness and let them go. If life or death had separated you, Adriana still did not know what she should do. She was afraid for Noah, to whom she was already very attached. After all, her husband and his father had died strangely burned in just a few months. Maybe it was her mother-in-law who poisoned them? Christina, the woman, isn't bad, but she's strange. And even good people can do bad things sometimes. Noah, let's do this. You're gonna stay at our house for a while. We have two parts. My husband wanted me to have my own female half, so that's where Noah and I will live. And you'll even have your own entrance. In the meantime, I'll try to talk to my mother-in-law. See if I can find out anything. You won't be too bored with us, the woman asked, and she was very afraid of what he would say. I'd rather live somewhere else. She wanted to protect Noah in her own feminine way. Because if a man needs at least one woman, nothing bad can really happen to him. A woman doesn't have strong muscles, but she has her own feminine ability to build a defense around her beloved. But if God has other plans, even a loving woman can't do anything. After all, she could not protect Michael, although she would have gladly taken his illness upon herself. But it is not for her to decide who should live and who should die. Still, Adriana wanted to do everything she could to help Noah understand. Aunt Christina, tell me everything, for the villagers are already gossiping that I am living with a copy of my late husband. I have no shame. I have a lover, and I'm having an affair with him in the deceased's house. Help me for Christ's sake. Noah's not judging you for anything. He just needs to deal with it. Adriana, for the umpteenth time, she started talking to her mother-in-law, but she just smiled and remained silent. But this time the woman suddenly asked, "Have you fallen in love with Noah?" Adriana, just tell me honestly. If you want to talk to me directly, then do not lie. Why are you fighting for him so hard? Christina asked, but at first I just wanted to figure it out. And now I can say that yes, I do. I know I don't stand a chance, but you can't help what your heart tells you. You know, Aunt Christina told Adriana timidly. She was afraid that her mother-in-law hated Noah for some reason, and now she wouldn't say anything. But the woman suddenly began to speak slowly. At first her voice rasped like the rusty spring of a secret door that hadn't been opened in a long time. But then there was a note of release and even joy in her voice. An old secret like a festering wound. So torn to hide and free the soul of an old woman from suffering. Paris, I know you're a good woman. I also know that you suspected me of being an old woman. And don't argue with me. The woman noticed Adriana's gesture of protest and put her palm forward, adding, "When you get older, you know things you don't want to know." Now, my husband's James did have an apiary and a beekeeper's hat. But I didn't marry him out of convenience. I fell in love with him as suddenly as you fell in love with your Noah. When I ran away from my husband, I wanted to devote my life to my daughter. And I was glad I didn't have to be afraid all the time. Like you, I was in my 40s. Only I was a lot more stressed out. And then there he was, James, so gentle, so kind. Like he was from a fairy tale. It was as if he didn't notice my caustic words or my cynicism, and he was always affectionate with me. In a word, he was a real man and accepted me as I was. Unhappy, believing in nothing, embittered, a lone wolf, wounded by humans and fellow wolves. How could I not believe and stand up for him? Do you understand me? asked Adriana Christina in a gentle and caressing voice. And now Adriana realized that her mother-in-law had carried this love for her husband through her whole life. Adriana nodded silently and began to cry. She felt guilty because she had already begun to suspect Christina of something wrong. Who was she to judge? Her mother-in-law didn't see her tears. She was immersed in her past and trembling like a young girl remembering her late love. So James became ill and was diagnosed with cancer. He had to sell the apiary and the cheese. He asked for it himself, but only he wanted the money to stay for me and the children, and I spent it all to cure him. The operation was very expensive. I lied to my husband and said that it was all on distribution and at the expense of the state. And he believed it, but God will forgive me. After all, I loved and fought for my beloved as I could with all my obsession, and I wanted to save my children's father. As for Noah, he'd overheard a conversation about his father's imminent death and cried. Wouldn't stop, even started stuttering, banging his head on the floor. So his father asked him to put him in boarding school so he wouldn't get worse. James did not want Noah to be at his funeral. He was weaker and more impressionable than Michael. And he yelled like a madman that he should be buried with his father when he was gone. Maybe I was wrong then. I didn't know what to do, and I just honored his last request. You can understand me, as a woman. Christina stroked Adriana's head. The older woman only now noticed that tears were streaming from Adriana's eyes and hugged her. Come on, sweetie, don't cry. You'll get better, the mother-in-law said. But I am. Am I to blame for not saving Michael? And to you. I thought you poisoned your husband and Adriana didn't finish and Michael. No, dear Michael, there was a child more dear to me than my own daughter. That one always stayed away as if she were a stranger, and from the stove there was always only warmth and happiness. But he fell ill with the same disease as his father, and the rest of the money from the sale of his father's property went to his treatment, like all my savings. Just said Christina, as if exhaling this last secret that she was tired of keeping within herself. But why didn't he tell me? Adriana screamed. What would you have done, sweetheart? Spend the last of your savings, sell the house. But he wouldn't do that. Hada made me swear I wouldn't tell anyone. And yesterday, Sunday, I went to the church to confess. And the bishop told me that it wouldn't be a sin to tell you and Noah. You tell him yourself and let him forgive me if he can. I didn't have the strength to make any other decision. Adriana continued to sob on her mother-in-law's breast, and both women felt better and better. Christina's heartache was cleansed, and at the same time, Adriana also stopped blaming herself for not saving her husband. The next day, Noah and Adriana apologized again to the woman and decided that they would sometimes go to visit each other. Of course, you can't grow back, but they're all family. Adriana, is it a good thing you sold me the house? I've got a big household. I help my stepmother with the medicine and Betty, and I give back gifts. And look what I brought you. I made this myself. Noah unwrapped 2 huge circles of cheese and pulled out a honeycomb-scented honeycomb. You bought an apiary again and opened the cheese to a guy. The woman splashed her hands. Yep, Christina's mom. That's what she let me call her. She even showed me where it was located. And I managed to negotiate with the owners, the man replied. What about your construction crew? Abandoned? Adriana asked, but why abandoned? I control everything personally, but I've selected guys who don't need to be checked very much. They know that no one else will pay them so much. I don't need anyone else's. I'm always ready to pay generously for a good job, Noah said, and with a sly wink he added, would you come when you're with your son? Because he and Betty are getting married. Do you know that your son doesn't want to live in the city? Mom, it's true. Uncle Noah promised to teach me everything. He's got plenty of work. And what a house he's built with red brick, 2-story mansions. It's beautiful. Let's go. You want to see it? My son persuaded Adriana. Although he knew perfectly well that his mother wanted to do it for a long time, but she was shy and afraid of rumors. So he decided to help Noah. Noah, I don't want to leave, said Adriana, to the man 2 weeks after she arrived. They'd been dating for 6 months, but she was tired of living apart from him. Besides, she liked living in her home village. Liked that Noah had built an entire loft for the young ones of 4 rooms, and she had the entire second floor to herself. Oh, and the first, if only she so chose, so no need to leave. Noah had long ago asked her to stop worrying about the opinions of the people in the village. They weren't mean, they just liked to talk, and there was always an excuse. Was it possible to just be happy and not think about anything? Asked the woman. Yeah, because you're under my protection. By the way, are you going to formalize our relationship? Noah laughed. Stop fooling around, Noah. Seriously, I was thinking of proposing to you myself, but I am embarrassed that you are almost rich compared to me. Adriana was embarrassed. But do you want me to sign over the property to Mason? Would that help? Noah was very happy today. Michael told him that his mother had already called the agency where she worked and said that she should probably look for a replacement. For good. Don't go after Mason. He's going to be a drunk. Besides, I'm gonna need the money. That's what I'm going to be. An old walker, said Adriana, and my heart suddenly sank. What if now the illusions of love will shatter like a crystal vase? He will take and say, jokes are jokes, but it's too much. True, Christina promised not to leave her, if anything, but she smiled mischievously. It was obvious that she did not believe that, having found out about the pregnancy, Noah would leave her. Her mother-in-law had said that almost twice already, my sons are decent people. And she put her index finger forward. She only did that when she was absolutely sure she was telling the truth. Adriana, Christina's mother told me that a long time ago, so I lured you to my chambers. Why is your face so sad? Have you fallen out of love with me or something? Noah was surprised. He had gotten used to the idea that he would soon become a father and had almost forgotten that Adriana had not told him about it yet. Noah, it's that simple. Married at 40 to a man who loves and is loved. What if I turn into Hippo after I give birth? I'm not young anymore. Adriana didn't know what the hell she was talking about. I wonder if a woman's head has some secret compartment for nonsense that comes out at the most inopportune moment. Well then, will you be my favorite hippo? Just build a bigger house. That's all. Business just said Noah, and Adriana was somehow sure it would. This time her intuition couldn't be wrong. After all, her heart sang like a bird that happiness against all odds was still very possible. I have prepared the rings, Noah told her, and to her surprise, he put a dandelion ring on her finger. When the woman looked at him in surprise, he said that it works 100%. But seriously, I have long ago prepared Banal gold ones. Mom, why didn't you tell me that I'm not your kin? Asked her daughter a year later, Christina. Something that had plagued her for a long time. It was hard for her to watch her mother fiddling with this Noah, Arena Noah, and two babies only a few months apart. The girl Camille was born to Adriana, and the boy Stephen was born to Michael. And the mother takes care of them as if they were her own, but they do not pay a bit of attention to her. At first, the daughter thought it was because her mother hates her father. But now that she'd had a secret genetic test, she knew for sure she wasn't her own. And she'd always felt something like that. And yet it hurt. Her mother's brothers are not her own, and her granddaughter and great-grandson are not her own. But her mother takes care of them, and only she never gets a drop of Mom's attention. Clara, come on, baby. I've always loved you. It just happened. We're like family, even though we're blood related. You're not really my daughter. I'm not very affectionate, and you've stayed aloof. That's just the way it is. I had a hard life. I couldn't have children of my own. Your own father beat me to death. I was just a girl when I met him. I didn't know anything about life. I thought he was just some charming bully. But you see how it turned out. When I got pregnant, he got mad. I mean, he didn't plan it. He was drunk. My baby died, and I don't even know if it was a boy or a girl. But God sent you to me, Christina replied. So simply and calmly, as if he had mentally recited all this 1,000 times long ago. Mom, where did I come from? Who is my mother? Asked Clara. It's a random woman. She gave birth to you and left you to your father. Nothing else was known about her. You see, she drank heavily, and I was too young then, so I didn't even know to ask who she was. I didn't know she wasn't coming back. Your father said she was going to take you away and ask you to look after you. The woman didn't want to tell her daughter the truth. Before my eyes involuntarily arose a picture of her first husband by the hair, throw out the girl's mother with her lover from the apartment. And they ask where they are and why this girl is screaming so much. Her husband then brought her home and said that they would get married and live together. And she didn't realize that that's not how family life should start. And then the years of fear began, when she trembled and hid the girl at her neighbor's house, and took the blows of the beast literally upon herself. She wanted only one thing, to make the beast forget about Clara and her little girl. After all, Christina had always considered her her own. But now she would never tell the whole truth. Let him think the worst of her. Christina doesn't need to be seen as a heroine. It's a good thing she was very young and doesn't remember anything. Now she's married, has kids, and is doing well. Mom, I remember how you hid me from my father, and how he used to beat you. He even hit you in the head once, Clara said. Christina cried. But how could she remember? She was only 3 years old. But why? Why didn't you ever talk to me about it? Were you scared, Clara? Asked Christina. She suddenly realized why the girl acted all these years as if frozen. She would say a word and suddenly run away to her room, suddenly angry about something. Rarely ever smiles and smiles affably. He can't get 2 words out of her, and she's a fool, the old one. She thought the girl had forgotten everything. But she didn't even have anyone to talk to about her fears. Mom, I didn't mean to upset you. You used to dream about my father too. I could hear you sometimes at night yelling at him to go away. I won't give it to you. Get out. Did Uncle James calm you down? He didn't know I was eavesdropping at the door, but I was the only one who understood you, Mommy, because I dreamed he was after us too. Mom, you're not mad at me for that, but for the fact that you got me instead of your own child. Suddenly Clara asked. Christina was puzzled. But how does she know about that? Period. If I said something like that in my dream, it was just a dream. Christina was still trying to protect her daughter. Mom, remember when you asked me to burn those papers in the attic? I found my father's letters there, and in them he threatened what would happen to us. Same thing, and he wrote that you couldn't save the little bastard. I mean, you can't save me, and you can't save yourself either. You and I are going to get what we deserve. I didn't want to tell you, but today, I suddenly got jealous. Why can everyone tell you what they love but me? And I love you more than anyone. Well, I guess I do. I mean, Adriana, Noah, they haven't been through what we've been through with you. If it's okay, I'll consider you a little more related. Even if it's not true, said Clara. And for the first time in years, her mother saw a faint tear roll down her cheek. The last time the girl cried was when she visited her in the hospital. Her first husband had then punched Christina in the head. The girl stroked her head and read chokingly, Mommy, Mommy, give me your sick head and take mine in return. Just don't leave me, please. Suddenly, she herself cried for the first time in a long time. It seems that the last secret in her life is exposed, and now she too can tell her daughter the truth. Clara, I am not angry at all that God sent me such a daughter, as you know, because I would have given up and even put my hands on myself. I fought that beast for you, and it was me who gave him up. Otherwise, he'd still be out there. You're my little angel, and for your sake, I was ready to move mountains. I was going to get married for your sake. And then it turned out that James was my true love. But I found that love because of you, darling. How can you doubt that you're my kin? You're my very own kin. My beautiful little girl, Olexka. Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, silly me, that I never said anything like that to you. I wanted you to forget everything, to be happy. Mommy, sometimes to be happy, you have to remember, said Clara, and quietly pressed her head into Christina's chest. And the latter cradled her as in her childhood, and hummed the very lullaby that always soothed her daughter. She had rearranged it herself from a children's song. The gray wolf won't come. I clung to his side. He won't bite anyone else. He won't hurt anyone else. Mommy, yours will be stronger. There will be happiness for my daughter. Mommy keeps all the Volchaks away from her daughter. Mommy won't leave. The wolf won't come. The wolf won't come. I'm clinging to his side. He won't bite anyone else. He'll never hurt anyone else. Mommy, yours will be stronger.